How are we feeling about the Giants offense after Jaxson Dart's debut and Malik Neighbors' season-ending injury? That and more this week on the couch. We need help. We need to make sense out of all of this madness and chaos. So we have the most sagacious, the one you find at the mountaintop, Bob Harris. Bob, we've seen Jaxson Dart. We've seen now the Giants offense, at least for part of the game, without Malik Neighbors. What do we think going forward?
Well, I mean, if you're a Giants fan, you've got to be hopeful. If you're a fantasy investor, you say, "Oh, I see rushing equity there." Look, the numbers weren't phenomenal, but he avoided turnovers. He kept them in positive situations, brought a different level of energy to the entire operation. The moment was not too big for him, and I thought he did a lot of things great. Avoiding pressure, that was really helpful. The designed runs, I think he had 10 runs. I think seven of them, 6 or 7 were designed runs. I think. And that was great. He got the ball out quickly and seemed to know what the plan was going in. The numbers again, 13 to 20 for
Right.
111 yards weren't fantastic, but I'm hoping for more. Losing Neighbors is obviously a big blow. But I think after this start, there's probably going to be a lot of optimism in New York. Just optimism of the unknown is a great thing. We talk
Yeah.
about this
Yeah.
over the many years. Is like I don't know how bad he might suck, and we'll find out. But I think if you're out there and you have Wan'Dale Robinson, you feel a little more comfortable that you'll retain some value. If you're out there hunting the waiver wire, Darius Slayton has led this team in
Mm-hmm.
receiving for the last 6 years. Theo Johnson caught a touchdown, one of
Mm-hmm.
my favorite flyers
Mm-hmm.
and best balls,
Mm-hmm.
a 20th round pick. I love the side of that. So I'm not expecting anything for Jalen Hyatt, but also Cam Scatterbo,
Yeah.
becomes a thing. And I think the rushing ability and some of the read options and things they'll be doing with Dart under center that they didn't do with Russell Wilson will work out for Cam Scatterbo. And I talked to Chris Bisignano from Giants Insiders over the weekend, and he says, man, the ship has sailed. Tyrone Tracy will be back. He'll have a role. It will not be that role that he had before. That is now Scatterbo's role. And the team is pleasantly surprised at how effective he is as a receiving asset, in addition to just being Cam Scatterbo. So I think overall, like if you like, we're coming off a win, an unexpected win over a tough defense. I think all in all, things are looking up. The loss of Malik Neighbors, and there were a lot of terrible injuries this week, and
Ugh.
and you hate to see that part. It's one of the worst parts of the game. I hope Neighbors, early in the season, the September, injury, hopefully maybe he can get around and be close to ready for the start of next season, and hopefully all his explosiveness and all the things we love about him remain. I like some of his positive commentary after the fact. I love these guys. Just like, man, that's the thing about football players.
Yeah.
It's like every time I see like they're in negotiations with management or whatever, I'm thinking, well, these guys, they punch each other in the mouth for a living, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no back down, in this. And I think it's the same when they get in these injury situations. It's viewed as a challenge, and the best tend to rebound nicely. And we've seen many players come back from this injury and have great success. And I'm hoping the same for Malik Neighbors.
Yeah. And, he'll come back to a team that feels different than the team that he played for last week. And I'm going to connect all the dots that you laid out very well, Bob, is saying be optimistic. Be optimistic and get in somehow into this Giants offense. And you have a lot of avenues on the waiver wire, so it should be pretty cheap. Jaxson Dart, like you mentioned, design runs in the red zone, successful design runs in the red zone. He showed some speed. He showed some toughness as a runner. And we didn't have that on our card that Brian Dable was going to make that a big element in the Jaxson Dart offense. He looked, vibes, aura. Yeah, I'll get crunchy here. And he looked, Bob, he didn't just look ready to me. He looked like he relished the opportunity to be out there,
uh, I think the stiff arm we saw him throw,
Yes.
like some of those things, like I sometimes like I saw that and I had like a little bit of a Jane Daniel vibe from last year. Like,
Yes.
you don't need to take that hit,
But
good on you. Like I appreciate the effort.
and another play with his back to his own end
Right.
zone where he and this is why another reason I like Darius Slayton. I think Darius Slayton is a guy that every time I looked at my waiver report this week at footballguys.com with subscription, I thought, do I have him high enough? Because as you said, I mean, he just missed Slayton for a touchdown in this game. No, so it was a
Yes.
24-yarder. So if we had Slayton with a 4 for 68 touchdown game, when Dart
We having a
throws
different
20
conversation.
times, we're having a different conversation. And he was the guy that Dart, with his back to his own end zone, like directed to come back and made a really nice play with presence and out. Jaxson Dart, if his perception and play is skewed by emotion at all, it's just enthusiasm. He's so I'm really optimistic. And then you mentioned Wan'Dale Robinson, who there was a play where Jaxson Dart on 4th down scrambled and Wan'Dale Robinson got his hands on the ball. Again, if he catches that, are we talking about him a little bit differently today as a waiver wire pickup? So this could have been a really successful offensive day. When they lose Neighbors, lose no emotion though when they lose Neighbors against, like you said, a defense that we thought was good. And then you mentioned Theo Johnson, one of the fastest tight ends in the league. He got a touchdown and the shovel pass. And what I liked about that, Bob, was they had Jaxson Dart do some ball handling, ball fakes, and not just on that play. And he was very effective and very much in tune and in sync with everything, not looking like a rookie in his debut. So, and you mentioned Cam Scattaboo. I think that I don't know if you can overpay for him right now. I mean, I think it, you look at especially in redraft. I mean, like if a trade I would make right now would be like Trey Benson and one of your like number 3 receivers or some sort of useful piece for Cam Scattaboo. And I'm just want to get excited for Giants fans because they had to watch Malik Neighbors go down. But now you have some personality, right? Dart, Scattaboo. Look at how great it is to watch Brian Burns play excited. First time in his career, he's like excited. He's doing the Spider-Man. He's making plays to like finish games. Am I just crazy?
No, I think that's that's something I mentioned right at the top. They played with a different energy, right? And they needed to play with a different energy. And I'm sure Brian Dable's quite pleased. I suspect this was as much of a job preservation move as anything. And I'm hoping it works out for him. Look, this was his handpicked, or they handpicked this quarterback. If they can't do something with this, they can't do something. And I think everyone there knows it. And so we'll find out. I do like you mentioned about Theo Johnson. I mean, way more like totally not talked about for his athleticism and speed, which is, man, he is like over the top on all the numbers. So I'm interested in him. That was, like I said, a 20th round investment in best ball. But I think for the most part, we just like to see an offense that's functional every week and not just against the Cowboys.
Yes. And that's the other thing, the week to week. Everyone's noticing the week to week nature. We've been paying so close attention to this, but this year it seems like it's really putting it front and center for everybody. Like, wow, there's a lot of variance week to week. And some of the teams we kind of have them triangulated. One of the teams we might have triangulated, not in a good way, Bob, is the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, has this offense hit rock bottom? Is it really just matchups? Because there's a move here. There's get out of Jamar Chase. It's too late to get out of Chase Brown. Probably too late to get out T. Higgins. Or it's the opposite. It's like, okay, Jake Browning got a little timid. Eventually easier matchups are going to come. He'll find that comfort zone where he'll take some chances and get the talent into play. He'll see some of the throws downfield. Or is this a car on fire and get out the fire extinguisher?
So I keep going back to the 2023 season when Jake Browning was actually pretty functional and the pieces around him were also functional. I think he was quarterback 9 over that 7 or 8 game stretch that he took over. So I'm hoping there's some normalization there. Hope is not a strategy, people. You should be making plans around this. One of the things I would say, the schedule you mentioned, is maybe appealing to me for Chase Brown. If you're looking to buy low on a player, he's the player to buy low on if you can. Jamar Chase, I don't know if you'll ever be able to buy low on him because I mean the investment made is going to preclude some of that. But you never know when there's going to be a frustrated manager who just ready for a fire sale. So I would be testing that. I mean, I think the expectation should be if things normalize and get on track, that Jamar Chase remains a tail end wide receiver 1 as opposed to the wide receiver 1 overall, right? So I'm still expecting that outcome over time. But not everyone has time. We're 4 weeks in.
Right.
People are making some decisions this week about their teams and the personnel on their teams based on what their own record is. And so, there's going to be a lot of players who aren't getting the job done for us. And as every year, a lot of guys who are rising up to do that. And we start having to make some tough decisions. I won't be surprised to see people make tough decisions on Jamar Chase. I'm in a position to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I think it's a good moment to pause, Bob, and say that part of effective fantasy football management is looking at teams' rosters, looking at their record, and even I think in most of the software, all of it, you can see like who they started and who they sat, right? Because sometimes you
Yep.
can see like, oh, if they given up on this player, like
They benched, right.
right, like Chase Brown was on their bench and he only had 10 points in a PPR league, and they played, Tyler Algier over him and got a touchdown, whatever. My point is that you can kind of put yourself like if they have Roshy Rice, if they're 0-4, they probably might not be able to wait around for Roshy Rice. And you've seen what's going on in the Kansas City offense. Woo. So, you put yourself in their place and you try to see what you can do to make a match. But another part of effective fantasy football management is the waiver wire. Let's start with the man of the hour, Woody Marks. You empty the wallet. You use the number one waiver priority. Is this one of those like the trains leaving the station? Probably doesn't get much better than this on the wire.
My bags are packed. All aboard. Yeah, I'd go on this one. The reporting this week from Aaron Wilson on Joe Mixon should come as a surprise to nobody. I think the most telling part of that whole story with this week was D'Amico Ryans being asked about Joe Mixon and answering by talking about two players he wasn't asked about, right? I mean, that tells you what you need to know about Joe Mixon. Mm-hmm. So I don't think there's going to be a Joe Mixon. Woody Marks is the more explosive piece. Nick Chubb isn't going away, but he can take a secondary role, and I think we'll see way more Woody Marks. I'd be all in on this. And I can't imagine like a league that I'm in where Cam Scatterbo would be available. If you're out there,
right,
grinding your waiver wire and you see him, I would agree with you. He would be probably the priority for me in all cases. But after that, you're starting to get into the Woody Marks, Kenneth Gainwell, and a lot of the guys that are going to have a shelf life. I don't think Woody Marks has a shelf life.
No, we finally saw it. Now it was Tennessee, but we finally saw the Texans offense show signs of life. They traded away Cam Robinson to the Browns, so they must have some faith in their offensive line, the pieces they've been putting together there. Ursary, the second round pick, who I know
that's
hasn't
been an
played well.
experiment,
Yeah,
so far, right, for
right,
them, right?
right.
And so maybe they see something that I haven't yet, or like I talked to John McClain on Sunday.
Love him. Oh
veteran,
man, talk about sagacious.
And he pulls zero punches.
Oh, he's at that point in his career where he doesn't have to.
Right. And he does not. And he's pretty down on the entire operation. And he has been. I've talked to him a month ago and pretty much he said the same things. But he did mention this time that they seem to be figuring out the offensive line. And when I talked to him in August, he thought there was no hope for the offensive line. He thought there was no hope. He also thought going into the game that they wouldn't score a touchdown or they wouldn't hit 20 points. And so he was pleasantly surprised in that as well. But I do think they're starting to figure out some answers on the offensive line. Nick Caley starting to figure out, how he can get something. My concerns have been for CJ Stroud was like he's under pressure a ton and he's inaccurate when he's under pressure. He's also become inaccurate when he's not under pressure, which is something that's a problem from being under pressure all the time, right? So I'm hoping they can, maybe normalize that a little bit and we can get a little more out of, Nico Collins for sure, but also Christian Kirk helps that a little bit. And we'll see if Jaden Higgins keep being a thing. But if I'm out here buying free agents this week, Woody Marks is at the top of the list.
Yeah, and potentially, a season changer. Again, if we see that Texans offense turn the corner, they face some tough defenses. I mean, they face the Rams, but this week they get, and we'll come back to this, they get a team that is turning to dust before our very eyes, the Baltimore Ravens, especially the defense. Before we get to the Ravens and other things, but I want to finish up the waiver wire talk. You mentioned Kenneth Gainwell. And there were some players this week that every time I looked at the waiver report, Bob, I thought, am I too low on this guy? Am I too low? Like we talked about Jaxson Dart, we talked about, his targets, but Gainwell, I wonder if this is going to be one of those classic waiver wire weeks, Bob, where somebody else has more money than you and can get Woody Marks and you settle for Kenneth Gainwell. But by the way, I've been waiting all week to use this one. I used it already in the Sunday report. Like the early bird got the worm. Wow.
Yes,
this was truly the early bird got the worm. If you were up at like 8:00 and you saw that Jaylen Warren was inactive, and he was even warming up on the field in Dublin, and the people there were like, he's going to play. They're like, you could find many tweets that said like, there's Jaylen Warren from the looks of his warm up. As expected, he's going to play. So even if you were watching that stuff, you didn't necessarily see the inactive coming. But if you picked up Kenneth Gainwell, And gosh, if you plugged him in, I don't know how many. I actually had to in one of my leagues, and it was the difference. But I looked at Kenneth Gainwell, Bob, and I looked and I looked. And one of the things that people need to understand as the Steelers go into their bye and control their division is that they were winning in the trenches. As a neurotic Steelers fan, let me tell you, the thing about that game that was so heartwarming, other than the giant, terrible towel, rest in peace, Myron Cope, and Dan Rooney, who was the ambassador to Ireland, they won in the trenches. They won in the trenches. Now, everybody thinks, hey, Jaylen Warren's going to come back after the bye, and they're going to go back to some sort of committee. But, Bob, Kenneth Gainwell looked really good in that game. Like, if you didn't know his background, let's say you thought he was Caleb Johnson, right? Let's switch the jerseys, right?
Okay.
If Caleb Johnson had that game, everybody'd say Johnson's taking over, right? Everyone would say, oh, it's Johnson's backfield now. So are we underrating Kenneth Gainwell?
For sure. I mean, well, this is where I remind everyone that you were drafting Caleb Johnson ahead of Jaylen Warren this summer, so we can all feel really good about that. Yeah, I think there. So we heard Mike Tomlin, who the great truth teller, he's going to run the wheels off Willie Parker. He ran the wheels off Willie Parker. We have that level of trust. He told us that Jaylen Warren would be the feature back, but it was a for now. It was a provisional until we sort out these other guys. The other guys have sorted themselves out, in my estimation. And I think we'll see more of a split to what we saw in past years with Najee Harris. I think that's kind of their desired plan right now. I don't think they want Jaylen Warren to be the every down back. And so I think we'll see more Kenneth Gainwell that he did. And that Caleb Johnson is aiding and abetting all of this with foibles on the return game. And also clearly not understanding pass protection and other things that get him on the field on offense. I think this is an opportunity for Gainwell. I think there's like you mentioned having to play him. I had to play Justice Hill. We'll talk about him.
Ooh.
I had to play Amari DiMercato, with no choice. I think there's always going to be these third down type backs that are going to come up and be helpful for us, but Gainwell could be more than that. And so I'd be willing, I'm not going to empty the bank on him, but I'm going to play him like I would pay for a guy in a split backfield. Like right now, you look at some of these split backfields. I mean, how comfortable are you playing any New England back or either New England back?
Washington,
not knowing what's going on. I think I feel more comfortable playing a back in an offense that I know is going to have some maybe more specific usage, and we'll see how it is when Jaylen Warren's back. We have a week to listen and while they take the bye and sort it out. But I'd be willing to invest in Gainwell in the hope that he becomes a full split.
And it also just because Jaylen Warren, the injury seal's broken, his knee, whatever it was.
He's been beat up. He's been beat up like since the summer, right? Like, and I think we can go back to last year. There were many limited weeks. This may be something that's just like a part of his regular thing. And remember, every time someone plays a game in Europe, they have to take a very long flight. And if you have any ailments or whatever going into that, that's teams worry about this. It's, you get the possibility of swelling or some other issues arising.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So Kenneth Gainwell, it's right there in the name, Gainwell, a prophecy. And the last thing I'll say on Gainwell before I turn the page to another waiver situation is just sometimes, and maybe this is because I'm always a prisoner. We're all prisoners of our own psychology, Bob. It's like sometimes we just don't look at things at face value in fantasy football and just say, like, he had an incredible game. He scored twice. He did everything they asked him to do. What was really impressive to me was on those between the tackle runs, he did not look like a third down back recast as a lead back. And that's what really got my attention. Okay. Another thing. Go
quickly,
ahead.
Put this in context because there's another player that fits this mold as well. This is not a sudden thing. This is not a new thing. Kenneth Gainwell, the drumbeat started this summer, right? It started in the training camp. We started hearing it. You say the same with Tyquan Thornton. It started in the OTAs in Kansas City that, hey, this guy's turning into a thing, right? And we saw it when he got the opportunities. They were limited more this week, but we should always put these spike performances in context of what we've been hearing over the course of time.
Yeah, and I think that, and I get really over exuberant, Bob, And I always feel like my audience is so kind to me. I feel the love from the audience because they know, like, don't listen to everything Sig says. He's gonna just get carried away. But some of the times that I get carried away, I might really be, it's like the whole oncoming train versus light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
But you don't necessarily need to act on every positive thing during the offseason and preseason. But when good things start to happen for a player and it was preceded by that, you
Correct.
should be more ready to buy in. Okay. So I don't know how to tie that into this last waiver thing, but I do want to. And again, I said this on the waiver show this morning. I really want to just take a moment out because I want to. I'm not. I don't think I've said a lot of positive things about Tyreek Hill, the human being, over the years we've done this, Bob. But he suffered a gnarly injury. Like I said, it sounds like the bottom half of his leg was kind of hanging on by skin. You know what I mean?
This
Like
this
it
this
was.
sounds like the Robert Edwards thing
Yeah,
from the
beach
Pro Bowl, like
volleyball.
like
Yeah,
life threatening. Yeah,
yeah, the beach, flag
yeah.
football,
Beach volleyball.
and he, when the whole team came to see him, which tells me they're like, well, this is the last time we're going to be together
Yes.
in uniform. And then the crowd and the Miami crowd, I understand why the Miami crowd's a little like moody. When they responded, he really, like, his spirit came to the top in a moment that for him, I'm sure it was like a devastating moment. And he smiled and he gave them some energy. Uh, Go ahead.
So, photos from the ambulance also on the right of the hospital with his family. I mean, big smile on his face, like putting out a lot of positive energy. Like maybe it's he realizes that, like, okay, this may be it. I'm gonna revel in the moment and enjoy the people and the vibe, and then we'll figure this all out going forward.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it could be a clarifying moment for him. I mean, I know Brandon Marshall's a good example of a guy that I think after football had the perspective to really turn some of the things that were problems for him into something that he could, like, help people. And maybe that could be something we hope for Tyreek Hill. But in the meantime, it's fantasy football. We have to be cold, emotionless, because I mean,
Meantime, Malik Washington
right,
and
Malik
Darren Waller
and
are
Darren
waiting.
Waller. Yeah, so how are we fixing our priorities on these guys now?
Well, for Waller, it's have at it, kids. Like, and I'm going to be the first one to acknowledge I have not been, my expectations for Waller are low. Right, he hasn't been good since what, 2020, 2019,
Mm.
2020. Last we saw him a year ago, he was horrible, and he may still be that. And I still think as fantasy investors, like, if somebody threw Josh Gordon out there, half of us would go chase him like,
Right.
like we were dogs at the pound and he was wearing a pork chop suit.
Mhm,
We'd be all
mhm.
over him. So I think, well, it'll be the same with Waller. But I think the difference for Waller, or the thing that you could, like, hang your hat on here, if we're looking to hang our hats, is, oh wow, Jonnu Smith's gone. There's a missing ingredient in this offense. And the spicy stew that we love so much was not so tasty this year. Perhaps putting back a missing ingredient, even if it's not the same ingredient, but a similar ingredient, could bring back some of the zest for the whole offense, right? And, like, I'm not saying we saw signs of that last night, but Tua looked a little more confident than I've seen him look. That little backward flip he made, on the trick play. I mean, like, just everything seemed to be working a little better. And I don't know, it's just, the way they used Jonnu Smith last year, he was such an integral part of that offense, such an important part of that offense. And his ability as a unique kind of playmaking threat at the position. I mean, you could make the argument that Darren Waller, if he's Darren Waller, is absolutely that plus some. So I'm optimistic, but it's tight end. He's a tail end tight end, and you can stream those guys left and right. Stream him. And if it doesn't work, move on.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm glad you talked mostly about Waller because I think that what I saw in one of the leagues that I'm in that ran the What's Up Jeremy at Reddit, doing that stacked league for charity. I'm playing for Toops Family Meal down here in New Orleans, and Malik Washington went for a lot more than Darren Waller did. And I think Malik Washington, and you can bring up Johnny Smith with Malik Washington too, because he's actually the one that has the Johnny Smith run after catch
Yeah,
stat, right, of
we've
skill.
seen it. Yeah, for sure.
But as I was saying to Cease on the waiver wire this morning, and I'm not trying to, I mean, I'm Malik Washington, again, I'm repeating myself, but I feel like I should. He gets as much out of the gifts he has as any player could. But he still looks kind of ordinary in NFL terms. Where Darren Waller, with his size and his fluidity, and he looked like Darren Waller last night, going up and making that catch for a touchdown, getting his feet down. He looked like Darren Waller. So
He
why not?
did.
Why not Darren Waller? And then just really quick, because maybe I feel like if someone says Jaylen Waddle, I'm like, oh man, it's just Jaylen Waddle. It's going to end in disappointment some way. Or is this Jaylen Waddle number one receiver? Time to get in, like, again, buy high, overpay for Jaylen Waddle because everyone's underestimating what he can do when you go in to a week knowing that he's the number one receiver.
This is the part where I feel like I'm the wet blanket.
Yeah.
Like, this is still, Miami has not been great at all this year. Like, can I see reasons to be optimistic? Yes. Am I generally speaking optimistic? No. I want to have Devon Achane in this offense, and if that's all my exposure, I would be perfectly fine. I think you're taking your chances to a degree, but we all have to take chances at this point, right? There's people still out there starting AJ Brown for crying out loud. I think Jaylen Waddle would make an interesting decision for people. He was getting a 17% target share already. I mean, Achane's like by far leading the way, but I just trying to remind myself that what this offense was before last night, and it wasn't great. Now,
No.
as I mentioned, maybe I'm hopeful. Maybe Darren Waller is the missing piece or whatever. Also, maybe not. Right. So I try to temper the enthusiasm a little bit and not go too over the top. I don't want to, put all my eggs in a basket that's going to have a big hole in it in no time flat. So I do want to be. So probably, if you're being smart, acquiring shares of Jaylen Waddle, if you can do it at the right price, I can't imagine people letting go of him right now at the right price, given the opportunity that's going to come for him. So probably the next best things are Malik Washington and Waller. And and if you're out there and you're in really deep leagues, go ahead and grab your share of Nick Westbrook-Ikini. He hasn't done anything yet, but we've seen him do it in the past. And if you're a churn and burn kind of person, sit him on your roster for a week or two and see what happens.
All he does is catch touchdowns.
It's okay.
And Miami could build a little more momentum facing Carolina. It's funny
Yes.
because Miami started out looking like a team that was like a dead body floating in the water, and that's pretty much what Carolina has looked like in 3 out of 4 games. So there could be some momentum here. A team, a team that doesn't necessarily look like a dead body floating in the water, Bob, but it looked like a ship that on stormy seas. The Ravens. The Ravens. I mean, is this ominous? Because
This
again,
is
go ahead. I mean, I'm set it up this way for fantasy because what's actionable here is it's just like the Bengals. It felt ominous after Joe Burrow went down, and if you got out of your positions on Bengals players right then, you did good. And now maybe it's time to get back in. Is it time to say people aren't being pessimistic enough about the Ravens, or maybe am I just again fear mongering? Because that's what I do here.
I think that the things that we invested in are going to be hard to get the return on if the defense continues giving up the most points in the NFL. They've given up 133 points right now. They lost Roquan Smith for at least this week. They're like down 7 guys,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, like, I don't know if this gets better all of a sudden, and if it doesn't get better all of a sudden, and we'll see about Lamar Jackson's hamstring, how serious that is. I think going up against the Houston pass rush, it's got some ferocious players in there.
Ronnie
Maybe
Stanley's hurt too.
Ronnie Stanley's hurt too. So I don't know that we're going to be pushing Lamar Jackson back if indeed that hamstring was I didn't like the way John Harbaugh was describing it. He really wanted to let us know that it was something serious, and maybe that was to assuage some of the discussions about whether it was like giving up or whatever. But either way, I mean, if this team can't stop opposing defenses, our investment in Derrick Henry is going to hurt. He only has 49 carries. He's getting 12 carries per game. That's not going to get it done. And if we see more games where they're playing from behind, we're going to see way more Justice Hill. He had 32 snaps to Henry's 21 in this one, right? And also got a little something done with him. He's a pretty versatile guy. Henry has nothing offers very little in the receiving game, and Hill does that. But I mean, I'll say this: Derrick Henry still looks like Derrick Henry to me. He's averaging 5.8 yards a carry. Went and checked the next gen stats. He's got the 7th fastest speed on the season, 21.07 miles an hour, right up there with healthy Tyreek Hill,
Mhm.
healthy Malik Neighbors, Jonathan Taylor. I mean, everything looks right, but the volume is not. He needs the opportunities to get the job done. The fumbles, I'm going to go ahead and leave them out, but they've been a factor in all this too, just cutting short, offensive plays and keeping the offense from being on schedule. And I know the two, were late in games and they were really important and they changed the momentum. So there's a lot going on for this team. But again, 133 points this defense has given up. They were giving up the most points in the NFL. This team is not built to play from behind the way that we want it to from our fantasy perspective.
Yeah, and like you said, there's a way if you want to put a chip on, oh, this is the new reality. It's Justice Hill, who's a pretty good player, and then probably getting out of Derrick Henry because of game scripts. And then you just wonder what's fascinating to me. And they have the Rams next week and then a bye. So it seems to me like Lamar Jackson misses the next 2 weeks, and then hopefully he comes out of the bye renewed. Because in addition to the hamstring, he just looked Bob, he looked confused, he looked upset. He looked like very emotional. And it could have been partially because of the injury. But for the Ravens, you just feel like going back to the first game, like the offense was great. Sure, they blew it at the end against the Buffalo. Everything's going to be okay. They beat the Browns. Everything's going to be okay. And now this team, the way they lost to the Chiefs, the way they lost to the Lions in their own house, you it feels like across the team, like it wasn't supposed to be like this. And are they resilient enough to rebound? You're looking at John Harbaugh. You're looking at like who they don't have Ray Lewis. Who are the veteran leaders? It's Lamar
So
Jackson, and Lamar Jackson looks upset. Go ahead.
I had an interesting conversation with our colleague Tip Major last night. He just brought up something on the side that I hadn't really given a lot of thought to. John Harbaugh's been there a long time. What do we know about coaches in the same place for a long time? Does their voice still matter? Is it still carry the weight that it's carried in the past? Are people not hearing the message anymore? You wonder. Like obviously this is a blip on the radar in terms of his career and in terms of the Ravens'
Yeah.
overall success, but it's a pretty ugly blip at the moment, and that's what raises these questions. That's why people wonder if Lamar was quitting in the last
Yep.
game or if he was
Yep.
really hurt. I mean,
Yep.
that's why we're asking these things, or that's why these discussions come up. So yeah, I mean, and like I'll say this, 3 weeks from now, the great thing about fantasy football and football in general, I remind everyone one more time, the design is for variance. The ball is an
Mm-hmm.
oblong spheroid. They
Mm-hmm.
want it to bounce funny ways,
Mm-hmm.
right? They want unexpected outcomes to be the norm. And in 3 weeks, the things that we thought were 100% true, we will go around. Just one example, like I went into the season, Sig, and I would pound the table like I don't want to pay the historic premium for Brock Bowers. I don't
Mm-hmm.
like paying the historic premium. I don't want to pay for a player coming off the best of anything ever because
Yeah.
you're overpaying. And then about 1 week in, I said, damn, I'm starting to wish like in the middle of the second round, he'd look a heck of a lot better than AJ Brown or Lad McConkey.
Right.
And now I'm getting past that and I'm back to where I was. I'm glad I didn't pay the premium. We can be right,
Yes.
and
Yes.
wrong again
Yes.
over the course of a season on many players. And we should have the humility to acknowledge that, but also try to figure out what's going on and project going forward. So like the Ravens, the problem for them is I don't see a path for the defense to get better right now. I don't
No.
see it materially changing. The injuries have become great. I don't know, beyond that. I mean, we'll look at the schedule. The Rams, I don't see that being a good outcome for them. Maybe they can, get some defense going against the Texans because they're the Texans. But yeah, just in general, I think these things that, we're trying to project out, realizing variance is a thing. This defense does not look like a lot of variances ahead.
No, variant's going to be bad, and injuries, but also just the way that it feels like they're just
Right.
so it's just so futile. But a run team, Patrick Mahomes didn't matter. Gut check game, big time gut check games coming up. They're looking at 1-5 going into their bye. And like you said, windows, like Cecil talks about, Matt Waldman tells us about the season moving in these 4-week chunks. That's how the teams understand it. And you can be right and wrong, right? I know that Dave Kluge quoted me on that in one of his articles. And then I said, and you can be right for the wrong reasons, then wrong for the
Right.
right reasons. Like what you expected to happen, but a whole different outcome is going to come, or something you totally didn't see coming happens. And it makes you look right for something that you said, even though you didn't see it coming. It seems random, like Bob, we're trying to find the math, right? Like everything,
Right.
math is the language of God. There has to be some sort of math that explains this. And I think the way the variance goes, it makes it feel like random. But I think when we narrow the focus to, again, like these 3 and 4 week game chunks, it does make sense within those parameters. But then, Bob, there's times when it still doesn't even make sense. And that's where we have to also ask some questions. So I want to ask you about Michael Penix going into his bye. I want to ask you about Michael Penix because he looked like, hey, that's the, throwing lasers to Drake London, and Kyle Pitts is fired up. Like, Kyle Pitts looks as excited to play football as he's looked in years, right? Bijan Robinson, he's a freaking maestro. And now, but it was Washington. But at the same time, for a young quarterback, success breeds confidence. They have the bye to, like, let's see what worked and what didn't. Is this an Atlanta team? I think the schedule's not too bad after the bye either. Is this an Atlanta team that we see turning the corner? Because you mentioned Brock Bowers, Geno Smith was so terrible, and Michael Penix had that kind of. He lost to Carolina 30-0.
Right. I'm old enough to remember when this team was shut out by the Carolina Panthers 2 weeks ago.
So what now?
The bye week is interesting. I would like to see them be able to build on that momentum, but it is momentum. It helps having Bijan Robinson, rack up career high 181 yards from scrimmage. Penix gets his first touchdown pass to a wide receiver. He hit tight end Kyle Pitts on a touchdown pass. So, it seemed like everything was working. He hit London in stride on that nice deep shot. So, yes, I'm optimistic. But also, I want to be realistic about this. This team has been two very different things over the course of 2 weeks. I'm hoping they can kind of work on those things. Reminder, they have some offensive line issues. I think that, going into the season, they seem to have figured those out, at least to a degree, last week. But just in general, there are still some problems. I'm not sure, like a week ago, they were firing Ike Hilliard. I'm not sure what the answer was in firing your receivers coach. But whatever it was, they got the good results last week. I don't feel confident that this is a sea change. Like, this should be my expectation going forward. I think my expectation going forward is more inconsistency.
Yeah, that's possible, probable. I root for guys.
Well, not for Bijan.
No, not for Bijan. Well, I root for guys like Michael Penix. I mean, just because he's such an aggressive passer, and when you see him confident and completing passes, then guys like Kyle Pitts and Drake London can get to their best ceiling. And we'll see. The schedule should help him coming out to the bye. Okay, another week 4 result that was not what we saw coming. I mean, maybe we saw it coming because of Washington with Penix, but the Green Bay defense. I'm wrestling with this, Bob, because I was so impressed with Green Bay's defense against Jaden Daniels against Detroit. Remember, Detroit might, we may look back at the Ravens season and say Detroit killed, Clue. It was Detroit in week 3 with the running game. That's what That's what killed the Ravens season, right? And the Packers, they didn't run the ball or pass the ball against the Packers. That was in Lambeau, but that was a road game. So I was thinking, as much as we might want from Jordan Love in this passing game, they're just not going to need to. They're not going to need to. And then all of a sudden against Dallas, who, by the way, the Bears' pass defense looked vulnerable. And then Dak Prescott loses CeeDee Lamb. And then all of a sudden he has to throw 5-yard passes to Jake Ferguson all day. So you're thinking going into this game, okay, it's Green Bay's defense. 2 of the interior offensive linemen are down for significant periods of time for Dallas. This is going to be a problem. No, it's not. Are you altering your outlook for the Green Bay defense and therefore the Green Bay offense based on this, or are you treating it more like a fluke?
I would like to treat it a little bit like a fluke. Dak Prescott was remarkable under pressure in this game. So, that I don't know that that's always going to be the case for every quarterback they face, but this is something we have to take into account. Look, from a fantasy perspective, I hope the defense lays down every game. I want to see this team. I want to see them leaning in not just on Josh Jacobs, although they also leaned on him nicely. If you played against him this week, as I did in the Scott Fish Bowl, you know what I'm talking about. There's now a verb called being Jacobsed, and I was. But man, watching them get the ball, am I confident Romeo Dubs is going to be the guy every week? No, I think they want Matthew Golden to be the guy. at some point, and we'll see if Dontavian Wicks is the guy at some point. But Jordan Love being a more effective passer, like that's going to, I think this is all going to depend on what defense is real. I was with you early in the season. I thought, wow, the Packers are the thing. Cleveland started making me think, well, are they really the thing? Right? Like Cleveland, not that they had a great offensive showing, but they could at least run the ball, which not every team could against them. So I thought there was maybe a path. But in this game, I thought we saw some great things from George Pickens. I think most notably, we saw Brian Schottenheimer's a really competent play caller. And maybe gets sold short just because he's Brian Schottenheimer, right? I mean, like, just there's a reputation out there. I thought he did a great job in this game, and Dak did a great job. Again, I don't know that this is something that's going to be persistent and sticky. I think this might be a spike performance that we'll look back on and think, wow, that was great, and wasn't as great going forward.
Yeah, but by Dak and by Brian
By Dak.
Schottenheimer, by Dallas maybe is the side of it. Than reading anything into it as Green Bay goes into their bye with that bad taste in their mouth. And yeah, Brian Schottenheimer and Jerry Jones, and I know that our mutual great friend, dear beloved friend Joe Bryant would say, like, oh, everyone's making fun of Jerry Jones, because we were making fun of Jerry Jones. I mean, Brian Schottenheimer was the joke hire. Like, oh yeah,
Right.
watch, Deion Sanders was even not as big of a joke hire as Brian
Right.
Schottenheimer. But there was a good article I read about Schottenheimer. And one of the things that I didn't get Dak in enough leagues, but I got him in a few because one of the things I saw was that the relationship with Dak was a big part of why they hired him. But also that article reflected on, like, I'm old enough to remember, like 16, 17 years ago, he was the Sean McVay. For a short time, Brian Schottenheimer was like the young, hotshot offensive mind that everybody wanted to copy, and then I think he turned down a job or something like that and never really got that chance to make the kind of leap that McVay did. So maybe it's like, hey, the NFL goes in these cycles. Everything that Brian Schottenheimer does is back, and also just that he has the attention of his team. And you saw George Pickens step up. They ran the ball well against Green Bay too. So,
Yeah.
Okay. One more thing I want to appeal to your great experience, Bob, to help us decide what to do. AJ Brown, is this a squeaky wheel kind of thing? But he said he wasn't even happy after they won the Super Bowl. So I mean, is this where in a battle of wills he's already lost? Which direction is this going to go?
Look, this is as simple. I've been banging on this since the middle of the year, and well, dating back to last year. This is a volume story, right? Passing volume was an issue last year. It's been the issue this year, and the Eagles see it as a feature, not a bug. This is the desired outcome. They've proven without a doubt their preferred style of play is run first. They've had They've run 123 offensive plays with a lead. 61% of those plays have been runs. Right? That tells you where their mind is at. And I thought this week was interesting because I think JJ Zach Reason had it. For the first ninth time since 2011, we've seen a wideout with a 30+% target share and fewer than 3 PPR points. He had 2.7. But that 37% target share he had was 9 targets. They threw the ball 23 times. Last week, playing from behind, they threw it 32 times. That was only the second time in the last 11 games that they had thrown the ball 30 times. In the games where they don't throw it 30 times last year, they were 10-1, right? This is the plan. They want to run the football. And so if you think that both A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are going to return value every single week, there's just not enough there. And maybe one will 1 week, like maybe against the Rams, both will, but that's going to be the outlier. That's not going to be the norm. And the unhappier AJ Brown gets, and the more cryptic tweets he puts out, the more interesting it's going to get, and the more we'll all be discussing it. But I think if you drafted him, there came a point in the middle of the second round where it was either Brown or McConkey, and I generally drafted a running back. And I don't want to say I was prescient on McConkey, but I was on Brown because last year the Eagles threw over 100 fewer passes than they did the year before.
Right.
And it was not an accident. It's the plan.
Yeah, and I got a lot of Eagles passing game because I thought that might be the plan, but teams are going to take away the run. The defense isn't going to be as good. They aren't going.
They are a little bit.
And that's and the frustrating part for fantasy. The frustrating part, some of it's Kevin Patullo, who is like, well, if you let us run, or if we don't have to abandon the run, we're not going to, even if it's getting stopped and putting them in long down instances. But then the frustrating part is when they finally do fall behind 26-7.
They could do it.
Jalen Hurts just lights it up. The question is that
Yeah.
it's almost like the opponents. Like, are the opponents going to force them to do it either with scoring, or by just so overcommitting to the run that Kevin Patullo has to
Right.
do? Yeah. So
Well, you're starting to see a little bit. I mean, I do think we're starting to see some of that in, I mean, whatever you think of Saquon Barkley so far, I think there's going to come a point where he's going to cut loose and start making the big plays. That's kind of his lane is, a bunch of little carries and then the big carry
mhm,
that destroys you. And we'll start seeing that at some point. I don't see any sign of him slowing down based on the workload from last year.
right.
Maybe I'm just want to be ignorant of that. But dude, this is a top down directive, right? This is Howie Roseman down.
Mhm,
We are a running team. This is how we win Super Bowls. This is what we want to do. We're going to pay Saquon Barkley even more money this offseason
right.
because we love what he does. When he paid him, why did he pay him? Do you remember what he said? Why he paid him? Because if you have like reversing the trend of devaluing running backs, because we think he's going to touch the ball more than 300 times. That has been the plan all along. And I think, again, AJ Brown is one of the best 5 receivers in the NFL. I mean,
Mhm,
I don't think I get a lot of argument from that, but also he's going to be the most underutilized wide receiver in the league until they're playing from behind. And I don't know how often that's going to happen. I'm going to see a lot of positive game scripts ahead, and I hope I'm wrong. Like I hope
right.
what you said about teams figuring this out and putting an emphasis on stopping the run and doing the things that would maybe force their hand can come true, and they can. But I don't know, like on the range of possible outcomes, I'm not putting that on the most likely end.
Yeah, I know, it's sad.
Yeah.
And AJ Brown won't get traded. Maybe he'll ask for a trade. He's not going to get traded, but it is that point in the year. We were all thinking it was going to be Tyreek Hill. It's not going to be Tyreek Hill. But I ask one last thing, again, appealing to your experience, because we want something consequential. I mean, I'll give you some names like DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley, David Njoku. If people bring up Alvin Kamara, no. I mean, I think he wants to retire a Saint. I think the Saints are fine with
I think
that.
so too.
Kirk Cousins, or bring up another name, or otherwise just anything now, like on your radar with the trade deadline coming up in a month, and ways that you might benefit from that for fantasy.
I mean, it was Tyreek Hill till now it's not, but that was the obvious one. I mean, Kirk Cousins seems like an obvious one, but it sounds like nobody has even nibbled, right? Like there's just been zero interest, and so probably not that. Like at some point, I mean, the Titans have to do something, right? Like, is Calvin Ridley get them enough in return to do something? I don't know that he does. But if he did, like the next coaching staff's really going to appreciate whatever draft capital or whatever they can get out of him. And not the interim coach that's coming soon, but the next year's coach who's going to have a talented young quarterback. But you just look at an offense that's puts up, 0 points last week, 175 yards of total offense last week. They've got to figure out some things there, and maybe part of that is some major shifts in personnel. That would make sense to me. Like right now, I think when Tyreek Hill got hurt last night, like my thought was, well, there goes this year's big blockbuster deal. And no offense to, I mean, very sad that he was gone and everything, but that's one we've all been counting on. So, like, I don't know, at some point the Ravens make some moves or do something as Derrick Henry become available. I don't know. I don't see there's no like DJ Moore has kind of been a sure target all along. That makes sense. He seems like the odd man out there. So Ridley or Moore, I guess, as I sit here and kind of, if I thought somebody had been even remotely interested in Cousins, he makes a lot of sense because quarterbacks are such a valuable commodity. But the fact that we saw the injuries we have so far and nobody's like even made a holler that I've heard of, that tells me something.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's another team. We'll see. I mean, maybe if the Brock Purdy thing gets worse and Mac Jones' knee gets worse, but yeah, I mean, you're probably right that we're better off not bracing for a big move. The DJ Moore one would probably be the most consequential though, because it would free up Luther Burden, and DJ Moore would probably become
Right.
the number one wide receiver wherever he went. It would be a consequential trade, probably. I would guess like at least a second round pick, and more would change hands. The Calvin Ridley one will probably be one like Amari Cooper or DeAndre Hopkins, where like, yeah,
Right.
he gets traded,
Right.
but
Like I feel like Arizona has a lot of needs all of a sudden, and I don't know if any of them would help them. So, uh, I wonder where they're at in terms of like their receiving core, their backfield. Like I'm sure they're not giving up on Trey Benson, but but I think fantasy investors might be ready to after the last game. We'll see. I mean, obviously, you should not be giving up on him. And I was very fortunate to play DeMarcado in a game, but only because it was a desperation move. I had
Mhm.
no choice. I don't expect that to be the outcome, but some of these things we're seeing in the moment are pretty disturbing. Again, it's week 4, people. Things are going to get sorted out. Players are going to start getting better. Ashton Genty would like you to know he
Yeah.
can play in the NFL. Amarian Hampton suddenly has that path to workload that he needed.
Mhm.
We'll see if the receiving core, evens out at some point or normalizes to some degree. But I think like in the case of like AJ Brown and Lab McConkey, I don't think we're getting those investments back. I just don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, McConkey, look, I'll just differ you. I'll differ on McConkey just because like he's still the good player he was last year. And Keenan Allen has not played a full season since like 5 years.
It's true, but I mean, we're already a month in, and you paid a second round
Oh yeah, you're not going to get that.
price tag, right? You're not getting that
You're
back.
not going to get that. But
Yeah, that was my
but there
point.
might be a stretch where he's like a first round pick for like
Sure.
3 or 4 straight games if Keenan Allen's out. But also that could be a Rondé Gadsden's music. Okay, and since you mentioned Arizona, I want to say like Marvin Harrison, I was glad to see his redemption, and I hope that can continue. The Calvin Ridley to Arizona could be interesting. Okay, but it's always interesting to go off the rails, especially with my dear friend Bob. We're not going to give you turtle talk. But, just know I've been studying box turtles. We'll save it for next time. I wanted to ask you this because, Bob is such a friendly name. Everybody has, everybody's have Bobs, especially someone like Bob Harris in your life. But who's your favorite Bob?
My favorite Bob.
Or just a Bob that's like you're glad that he's also in the Bob club?
Well, I like all the Bill Murray Bobs. I like
Oh, what
the
about
Lost in
Bob?
Translation. What about Bob? The Lost in Translation.
Yes.
Bob Harris. That's a great one. Man, I've never actually even thought about that. Are there any other great Bobs?
Bob
Are
Newhart.
there? Oh, Bob Newhart is fantastic. Yeah, that's like I love Bob Newhart. Like, what a great people forget. Like he did one of the most amazing shows, a series that was
Mhm.
phenomenal, then did another one.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the second one, he called back to the first
Yeah.
one. I mean, yeah, Bob Newhart is pretty wicked. Bob Love, Tucson, Arizona. They called him Marshall K Gun.
Mhm.
Kids afternoon show
Oh, wow.
guy that ran a show for like about 20 years. Marshall K Gun. All the kids would go down and you'd
Mhm.
sit in the audience and get treats. So Bob Love, shout out to the late great. Man, Bob. I can't think of enough Bobs. I don't know enough Bobs. I need to get out and meet
A
more
Bob club.
Bobs.
That's it. You're gonna start a Bob club. And so I mean, on that note, I mean, have you always been Bob? Were you Robert at any point in
No,
your life?
I've been many different things. It depends on like there's still people who call me Robert or Bobby, depending on when they knew me, because like you change schools and there's 4 Bobs, and so you're the next one. So all of a sudden you're Robert, and so I was Robert for quite a bit of time. I think so yeah, I've been different things to different people at various points in time, and to some of those people, like one of my oldest friends, still calls me Robert because she's known me since we were
Yeah.
in like 3rd grade together, and that's when one of the switches came. So yes, it varies, and it depends on how angry or not somebody is at me. That might be a factor in what the name is, and of course my middle name, Patrick, Robert Patrick,
Oh, wow.
leads to the occasional Bobby Pat.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. That's a good combo. It's funny you bring up some stuff about like people call you different names depending on when they got to know you. I remember my college roommate, my freshman and sophomore year, he was Andy at home. But we called him Drew, and he was Drew to us. So when his friends from home came to visit and we were calling him Drew, they were like, huh? And I'm wondering how it
Right.
was for him because, depending on where he was, they called him there. But, it's interesting. And I think that your name, I remember there was that one Bugs Bunny cartoon, Bugs Bunny Elmer Fudd, where like the hat truck crashed and all the hats were in the air. And as like the hat makes the man, right? And as
Right.
and as the hats were landing on them, it would change them. Similarly, I think like the name that you're called, like anytime I tell a story about my childhood and I'm speaking in the voice of my mom, it's always Siggy. Not very many people call me Siggy. What about Bob had a Sigmund? This is, it's interesting. I'm going to be thinking about this because then your name is like the sound you hear the most in your life, right? But if it's different
Right.
people, different
It's
names.
it's funny. I have a college roommate who goes by Frank and has always gone by Frank, but his name is Francois.
Oh.
And so I've always called him Francois. So we'll get together nowadays and we'll be in a group of people that have no idea about any of this, and I'll say, Francois. And like the people like
Mm.
looking like what, and then they all find out, oh, that's your real name. No, nobody knows that one. It's always enjoyable to break it out on him.
Yeah, like the people who go by their middle name and no one ever even knew that their first name is something else. And then there's always a story behind it, or it's like a relative called them that. The same thing happens with nicknames. Speaking of Woody,
Bill.
yeah, right, right. So it's fun. It's fun to think about this stuff. I do want to catch you because probably we'll talk again soon. Certainly once or hopefully even twice before the end of the year, Bob. But probably, it's fall. It's not fall in New Orleans yet. Thankfully, there hasn't been any hurricane cones, but it's hot. It's still really hot here. But I know it's September 30th, because we're into fall. When you think of fall, you think of Halloween, right? How are you a Halloween guy? Does Halloween, matter to you?
I'm always working, and so no, but the fear is like I'm going to be doing my radio show or whatever, and the kids are going to be ringing the doorbell,
Mm,
and so I do a lot of I do put the candy out, or I try to give out the candy. The kids have thinned out. I want to
mm.
say over the last 10 to 15 years, I end up eating way more candy than kids, and that's not acceptable. I need more kids to come
You
take
need to
my
eat more
candy.
kids. Eat more kids.
I need something like that.
Yeah.
I need the kids to eat more candy because I don't
Right,
need any
right.
more.
You said I need to eat. I've been eating more candy than kids. But that's you remember when we were kids, there'd always be that house or like the abandoned. Like, oh, someday you ever seen the old lady or the old man that lives there? But no, that's only your Halloween persona. What favorite Halloween? So you got to buy Halloween candy now, Bob, that you will eat since you're not giving it out. So
Yes.
what are you buying?
There will be Reese's, there will be Baby Ruths, there will be
Mm,
Kit Kats,
yeah,
a mixture.
yeah.
Like I don't know the brands well, but when I look at my shopping cart,
Hmm.
I say, oh yeah, I recognize those, and I'll throw those in. So yes, those would be the top of the heap. I mean, everyone knows Reese's. It's hard to screw
Yeah.
that up.
Oh yeah.
And like anything, it's got some nuts and some nougat and some caramel and some chocolate. I mean, it's all fair game.
And um, as a kid, did you go trick or treating as a kid?
I did go trick or treating as a kid. I want to say like lived out for most very early we lived in like a suburban neighborhood, but in later years lived out in the country and stuff, and so it was a long walk to like hit
Mm.
like the take an hour to get to six houses, right?
Uh-huh.
So so a little less of it as I got a little older. I guess in high school didn't do a lot of the trick-or-treating, was out doing scurrilous things. Uh
Scurrilous. Great use of that
so
word, scurrilous.
I don't know. I'm like not a big trick or treater, not a big costume person. I wear the same costume every
Right,
day. It
right.
gets scarier every year. So
Yes,
I
yes,
just go with that.
yes, yes, because, as you pointed out, like, there's a point in, your childhood, well, at least back in the day, whenever Halloween becomes less about candy and more about vandalism, petty acts of
Yes.
vandalism, and there's the fun stories I could tell about that, absolutely,
Yes.
and like you said, I mean, in New Orleans, every day is Halloween. Every day is
Right.
Halloween because we know that this is a costume, that this is a mask, because you're really a solar spirit. This is the vehicle, so you already have permission in New Orleans you can just wear body paint if you want. That's fine. Nobody's gonna really so I like that, but I'm with you. I was never that big on costumes. I'm trying. Certainly New Orleans try to get you in the spirit of. I'm still trying to figure out what we're going to go with. Noah wants us to be plague victims. He wants to be the plague doctor, and he wants Kate and I to be like. So that's cool because I mean I think and you can always in Halloween like dead anything works. Like just take something and add like the makeup and make it dead whatever. In this, but of
It's
course,
fair.
the real best Halloween costumes are the ones that are like so offensive. And I don't mean offensive like in an ism way. I just mean like it's really like the night when all the spirits are supposed to come back. So yeah, it can be like Beetlejuice. You can have some fun with it and make it lighthearted, like it always is with my dear friend Bob Harris, and trying to make sense of this. I always feel calmer after I talk to you, Bob. If hey, We've seen it all, and we're going to help you for the next thing we see when we say we've seen it all +1, like a 40-40 tie. We hadn't seen that before, but whatever happens in
That's
the NFL.
fantastic too, right?
Oh, man, yeah. I mean, that's what it signifies. So we hope that you will continue to trust us to help you make sense out of this, to know what to do next. We love serving you. We love spending time with you, as always, because you're so very classy.